3 to 9
We used to
an
go
hour.
up to Townsend's Lake
The
Hotel.
optics,
Good evening, everybody.
easily $400.
Let's get
No,
started.
everybody in line.
I just love you
talked him out of
talk, gun
turning it
talk.
in.
Oh, really?
They talked him out of turning it in.
Like he could sell
Yeah.
I said to him, if you're gonna do this, at least take the scope off it, take the scope off
Yeah.
Welcome to the law committee meeting.
it. He thought he was gonna get fair market value.
I'm starting the meeting. Engraved invitations. Sorry, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the law committee meeting. Thank you for being here. Has everyone, let's take attendance if we could to start out with
Sure thing, Madam Chair. Ms. Platsky,
presence.
Mr. Bergdorf,
Present.
Mr. Feeney,
Here.
Mr. Mayo,
Here.
Mr. Peter,
Here.
Mr. Ricard,
Present.
Ms. Whalen,
Here.
Mr. Kuhn, and Ms. Cunningham are excused. 7 present.
All right, great. We had a chance to review the minutes from the past meeting.
Yeah,
I make a motion.
Thank you. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you. Passes unanimously. Item 2 is being withdrawn. Items 3, 4, 5, and 8 are tabled at request of sponsor. This brings us promptly to item 6.
Item number
And- Go ahead. Nature and Historic Reserve System, and Mr. Feeney's going to
Yeah.
address that.
Yeah, I'm
as a
pinch
prime
hitting for
sponsor.
Mr. Reinhardt.
Yeah.
This was a bipartisan thing that was put together with him and Mr. Purley. Essentially, what they're doing here is creating this historic preserve, nature and historic reserve system. The 2 properties are gonna go in at the beginning are gonna be the Ann Lee Pond property and Lawson's Lake. And then there's qualifications for further properties going into the future. There's restrictions on the properties. There's a system of managing them. There's also a system for maintaining them. The uses that can be done. There's restrictions on motor vehicles, any kind of ATVs, that type of stuff. And there's also a procedure for removing any properties in the future from the preserve. There's also some penalties for violating some of the restrictions. The first offense is $500, second offense is $1,000. Any questions?
Yes, Ms. Randall?
I have a question. How does this impact preserves that are existing already, like the pine bush? Does it impact?
Well,
There are
that's a state
designations?
preserve, so I don't think it has any impact on that at all.
No.
No.
So it won't be a state preserve and a county reserve? If you're a state reserve, you're already a state preserve?
Correct. Yeah. This is just county preserve, and like we said, there's gonna be 2 properties in it at the beginning, and there's procedures for including other ones in the future if they wanna add to it, but it doesn't affect anything with the pine bush, that's state.
Ms. Bergdorf?
Thank you.
I'm a co-sponsor of this, and I'm obviously gonna support it. I just wonder, and maybe, I see Luke Rogers in the audience. You know, when we talk about the Ann Lee property preserve, I can't imagine that does that include the old Ann Lee home, which we're taking down now? Because I thought part of the strategy there was to make that a shovel-ready site for development.
I think it's just the Anley Pond.
Yeah, I think it's the park area that is delineated, so.
You know,
It's
the-
the other side of 155.
It's the other side of Meeting House Road, like.
Okay.
where The water body is and back there.
Okay, so not the south side.
This didn't come from me, but I believe so.
Well, I only asked you the question because of the economic development impact. I assume taking down the Ann Lee home, there's other beneficial uses for that land.
I don't think
And
it
it's not
applies to
included
that.
in
I
there.
think it's, they got that parking area there where the pond is and the
Yeah.
trails and all
Yeah.
that, that's what I think they're talking about.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, well, I just wanted to.
Not
It's
the
got,
buildings.
it's got a deed in here, it's listed for Ann Lee Pond, but, I mean, could they have a better description in this language or anything?
think
What's,
Did they have a better description of specifically where they're talking about? I mean, it does mention a deed in here. I'm looking at
I,
the
you
deed.
know, without looking at the deed, I couldn't tell you.
Ah,
I think there's no intent to include the
Don't.
building. It's only meant to include the pond.
It's, yeah,
I
it's,
assume that too.
Yeah. that's, because that was actually something that was included back in like 1976, right? That was the only thing that was part of some kind of a county preserve.
Yeah, the former eco preserve.
Right.
There's a section in the law that says
Well, I don't know.
it's 180 acre area, includes the large pond, wetlands, forest, and meadows.
Okay,
All right, so not the buildings.
Yeah,
Okay, right here.
unless it's a beaver house.
That's most.
All right, right here. Wetlands, forest, and
Yeah, top of page 21.
Okay, then, it's a great clarification, thank you.
Any further questions? I think Matt Peter has a motion.
That is correct, Madam Chair.
Ms. Burdick, second. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you, passes unanimously. Item 7, local law, the long-awaited codification law. Mr. Joyce, Chair Joyce, welcome. Would you like to
Thank you
speak
for
on this?
having me. As you mentioned, long awaited. Again, we want to take our opportunity to thank Legislative Council for all the work that they've done on this over the years. It's been a years-long process. In addition to help from the clerk's office, and as soon as it is adopted, our office will work diligently with IT and all the other departments to get it up on the website, make sure it's accessible for the people of Albany County and for our departments.
Mr. Burdick.
Question, I don't know if this has been decided yet, but I know I asked the question during the budget cycle, there's some money going to the clerk's office, to county clerk's office, to update this. Do we have any sense as to how quickly they'll update the code after each of our meetings or something? Will it be current or real time, or is that still to be worked out?
The code's a bit different than like the live website.
Yeah.
It's not gonna be updated with frequency. It's more or less sort of a constitution of the county as opposed to just a resolution that authorizes a contract.
I know, but if you add a local law or a resolution, the code is supposed to be something that anybody can go and reference.
Right.
And if we're putting up the version that's good on January 1, 2023, and somebody uses it as a tool in July of 2023 and say, well, that's the code you have online, and there's something that conflicts with something they want to do, that's sort of problematic.
Brady, you know the frequency?
General code is pretty flexible about what kind of schedule we want to set. Some places set a schedule of every 6 months or a year or every 3 months. Given the fact that we don't adopt local laws or things that would necessarily amend the code every meeting, something in the terms of every 3 months or 6 months might be sufficient to cover that. But we can always reach out to
But
general code
are
and discuss with
our
them.
resolutions included in the code as well?
No,
So it's just local laws?
correct. Anything that would affect the public writ large. So a resolution for dump trucks isn't going to necessarily affect the public. This is supposed to be a resource for the public and businesses. Anyone who's trying to understand how the operation of county government works can use this resource. But the general use of like every resolution would be something that would be covered more akin to Granicus when that goes live. So that would cover, that website would have every resolution, every motion that's made on the floor. That would be a complete accounting of every meeting that we do, and that will be updated within like 24 hours of the meeting.
On a synthesis basis, so somebody could search it, so if somebody wanted to see airport lease, they would get the current airport lease, or?
The codification will have has everything set up into different categories. So
Yeah.
you could search for airport and whatnot, and you'll see the most recent documents that are, been included in the code will be available for the public or anyone to look at.
I mean, my experience with this goes back a long, long time ago, but every quarter, we used to get we actually had a book, and you would get new pages to put into every chapter, which actually showed the update of town law. So I just wondered how current the online version would be. It's a huge step forward, though.
Any other questions? Mr.
Make a motion.
Thank you. Thank you, second by Mr. Peter, all in
Those
favor?
inserts in the-
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Great, thank you, passes unanimously, thank you, Chair Joyce. All right, item 9, local law 8, the lead exemption. Justin Reed, welcome, how are you?
Thank you, Madam Chair, doing very well. Delighted to be here with the Law Committee. Not a complaint, but I do want to know I don't have a paper placard. So, with it on the record.
You can borrow that, Peter.
Local law A, it'll opt us into something we're allowed to do with the state, which will give, county property tax breaks for new construction or improvements that reach LEED certification. The tier structure on this is one, provided by the state, and so that's the structure we would opt into. In the initial introduction, I think we had a good conversation on this. We did have a conversation in the CSGI committee, which I think was favorable, but we did table it after the discussion because the public hearing had not happened yet. I know we had some questions on the financial impact of this, and just a concern to make sure that we're not providing a incentive here that's so generous and too great incentive that everyone would go get their buildings LEED certified. And just some general data on the program. I can tell you that Niagara and Tompkins counties opted into this and passed a similar law since 2015. They've had 13 buildings over 10 years that qualified for this tax exemption, and the average assessed value was $400,000 on those buildings. Here in Albany County, we've had 60 LEED certified buildings since 2002. So about 3 buildings a year have reached LEED status of some level. So I think in general, the incentive here, it helps us in Albany County keep taking the lead here, keep showing that we're here to build a greener future and provide some incentive here for developers and builders and folks to improve things to help with that. I don't believe the impact of those who have opted into this has not been so massive, but it certainly has helped where it has been passed. With that, Luke Rogers, who the lead of the county executive's office on this, is here. And
Yeah. And Legislator Reedy
anything
did a
there?
great job summarizing. I'd say this is a modest but meaningful initiative that we're opting into. It's consistent with the way we are investing in the county and encouraging building owners, if they're primarily constructing a new building, but also undertaking a significant retrofit, to consider taking the additional steps needed to get their building eligible for LEED certification. The thinking here is those extra steps, there's an extra cost. You're gonna spend a little bit more if you're going to get a building to the level of LEED certification. So this helps sort of offset those costs and encourage people to take that step. And happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Ms. Wynn.
Madam Chairman, does this apply to residential and commercial both?
It does, yep, it does. I think that a large enough commercial project that's eligible for IDA financing is likely to go that route just because it's a more substantial benefit. But, residential and small commercial projects or commercial projects that aren't eligible for IDA benefits are a good niche for this incentive.
Now, you referenced Niagara County and Tompkins County. I don't know what the development rates are in those counties, but this is Albany County and we have, a high rate of development. So are those really good counties to use as a comparative market value? I mean, no offense to Niagara County or anyone from there, but I don't know if, there's a explosion of development, like Albany is 2 hours and 45 minutes from New York City.
Yep, so
And
they're
those
the
counties
ones,
are not.
they're the
So-
ones that have opted in, so that's why we use that as a
Uh-huh.
comparison, just to show the relative volume. I think that's also why we wanted to provide the number of, prior to the incentive, buildings in the county over the last 20 years that have gotten certification. So again, we've averaged about 3 a year. Let's say generously that this incentive doubles that, which I think is, that'd be a good outcome. You'd be talking about 6 buildings a year receiving this incentive. So in terms of the scale of the county, still a small impact, but obviously positive. That's why we want to do it.
First of all, I'd like to be added as a co-sponsor. I think this is a good common sense measure to encourage energy conservation and energy reduction. People who are building, who, if they want to make the investment to go LEED Silver, it's not cheap. They could, if it's a $10 million building, you may be starting with 0 real property tax for the building. You're putting 10 into it. If you got $1 million tax, I don't want to call it a write-off, but a deduction for the first 4 years, what did we figure, Lou, about
4,000.
4,000
So
a year?
it's-
So you're talking about, over the course of 4 years, you're talking about $16,000. Well, if that encourages someone to do a LEED Silver building, that's an economic decision that they will make. But the beneficiaries are obviously the energy reduction, and there's water recirculation stuff, there are all sorts of point and lead. The only questions I had, and Luke sort of took me most of the way through the process, but I have every confidence that it'll work out, is that I wanted to know who decides when a building is LEED certified. Because we here in the county, obviously, we don't do any assessments. It's the building assessor, the colony assessor, the hose assessor. Somebody has, when they put in and they say, my building is gonna be LEED certified, it has to be someone with the right credentials that has reviewed results, building stuff. I think there are enough safeguards in it. So I think it's a very good program. It's what some people would call common sense green government, where it's no mandate here. It's an encouragement maybe to do something a little above and beyond. So I'm going to support it and sponsor it.
Thank you, Mr.
I'm sure. I would, I'd be like to be added as a co-sponsor. I agree with Mr. Bergdorf. What I view this as a tool in the toolbox. I don't know how many times it will be utilized. The amount of individuals that have a project where like below $1 million in assessment will make their decision is relatively limited, but again, a tool in the toolbox nonetheless. I also think as we're building our green economy, encouraging people to retrofit is only going to help our local economy and trades that way. The only 2 things I would ask is one, for an annual report of how many people utilize it. I would like to see that just to see what we're doing and the financial effects thereof. I would also encourage maybe a look on direct grants for lower and middle income individual homeowners who might be looking to retrofit their house into different green infrastructure. And I'd like to see maybe we can close that delta as well. But again, good tool in the toolbox. Thank you, Mr. Reedy. I'm good with that.
I think that's a very, if I could, that's a very important point. The last point that Matt made is this primarily is taken advantage of by new construction. And, if we're gonna really reduce the emissions from our building stock, most of our building stock is existing buildings. And so it's one piece of the puzzle. It's not the full answer, but it's one piece of the puzzle.
Mr. Berger?
Just one more thing that question I asked Luke, which I think everybody, assuming we're still on the same wavelength, you can't double dip with this. You can't finance it as an IDA project, get a pilot,
Right.
which has a certain amount of deference,
Yep.
and then say, oh, I'm also LEED silver,
Right.
and get it on top of that.
Yeah,
So-
they're structurally different in the way that they work, so this is an incentive that reduces your tax rate. A pilot actually takes you off the tax roll and you pay that pilot payment in lieu, that's the name, of taxes. So you can't have both, just structurally.
Yep.
I just thought that was important.
Good point by Mr. Peter. We will be working in a reporting on this for the final version, bring it to a full vote to the legislature.
Sounds good.
The only, Madam Chair, the only question I have of Dustin or Luke, let's say after 4 years, somebody sells the property, is that transferable to the next owner of the property?
Stays with the property. Yep.
Stays with the property, okay.
Yep.
Okay, follows the way. All right, that's what I thought. All right, thank you. Thank you.
Is there a motion? Mr.
Motion.
Peter? Second?
Madam Chair, I have a question if I could. On this percentage of exemption table, typically by the 10th year, it's 0%. But I notice on one of the categories, it's 20% after 10 years. Is this a state chart, or can we amend that? That's a little concerning for me that they don't get back, they get down to 0.
Yeah, it does go to 0 after 10 years, of course, but.
No, this one doesn't. Platinum.
No, after the 10th year.
After that
After
10th year.
Oh,
It's a
after.
10-year exemption, so after that, no matter what. But, platinum is the hardest to achieve, hence the most generous benefit. And to answer your question directly, no, we cannot. It's state,
It's a state
it's
charter.
statute, so we're stuck with what we've got, but it, makes sense.
I don't know if Mr. Burdorf's question was answered about will there be a separate agency created to manage this, or will it go under the umbrella of an IDA?
Yeah, I didn't know if you wanted an answer, so it's very simple the way this works. If you are undertaking a project, you have to go out and get the certification from a LEED accredited certifier, and then you basically bring that with a standard application to the town or city assessor. So they're not being asked to become experts in the ins and outs of LEED. They're being asked to look for that certification. If it's there from an accredited certifier, then, check the box, yes. So there really isn't a huge, especially because of the volume, there isn't a huge burden.
I think for the different levels of LEED, there are different levels of information that you have to supply. And it may be, and I don't know, because when we did this, it was so long ago. In the beginning, the only people that could grant LEED certification was the LEED organization. And you would put you would have LEED certified architects and engineers who would put your applications together, and then you would send it off. And then it would get approved, and then voila, you were LEED silver. I don't know if that has morphed now towards other entities being able to approve status, but for some of the levels of LEED, you had to submit a year's worth of rainwater runoff results. You had to submit 6 months worth of, if it was an existing structure, reduced electrical usage. So in some instances, a building will be built, will have I would assume, a full assessment, and then once, if there are criteria to meet that have to be met before you get the silver, then somebody would come in and look for the exemption under this program, I believe.
Yeah, it's pretty rigorous, it really is. You'd see a lot more people taking advantage of it if it weren't, but, it's not a walk in the park to get it. You have to take a lot of steps in a lot of different areas and have that validated.
Okay. We do have a motion on the floor.
Second.
Second by Mr. Feeney. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Mr. Eady. Thank you, Mr. Richard, for
Thanks.
coming in.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
your time on this.
Motion closed?
Sure. Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. Thanks, everybody.